The prosecutor, with the Brian Kohberger, he ended up taking a deal. He put a deal out, he accepted, and this prosecutor didn't wait to ask all of the families and like take a vote or something, right? And so most of the families and friends were very angry at this prosecutor. So that's a backstory before we actually start watching him. He's in an interview. It's gonna be interesting to see if he ends up going against some of those families that were complaining about him. And I will also note he cried a lot every day in the trial, like a lot. Even the judge cried. So it's definitely been an interesting trial in general, and it's very rare that you're getting a prosecutor and a judge to both cry and break on one case. So not good. Let me move myself to the corner. I have it all set up. If you're on live with me, you should tell me if you thought the plea deal was a good idea or if you feel like the majority of the families and they're not happy. For me, I think that he definitely would have been given the death penalty. And I really think it would have gone all the way. And he'd, get whatever he deserved or what was coming. But yeah, they didn't. They pulled it. And like I said, I kind of agree with them that it's like, that is a little bit of justice, but you could have had even more. And that is why some states do have the death penalty. But he, I guess, lucked out for this one. All right, sorry, I'm setting it up. Let me know if you can hear it all right, if you need to turn it up or down. And I'll move myself to the corner. Ooh. All right.
This is Inside the Brian Kohberger case, the Idaho student murders. I'm 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant. It is great to be with you, Bill. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us what it was like for you to be at the center of this case that literally commanded attention all around the world?
Well, I didn't feel like I wanted to be at the center of the case. It's really just a team effort. This was a huge team effort. I've been the prosecutor here for over 30 years now. I've never seen this degree of coordination with agencies like the FBI and the Idaho State Police, as well as our Moscow Police Department.
You're the quarterback, kind of the team captain, and all of that social media pressure. Did you feel that during the course of all of this? Did you pay any attention to it, or did you try to brush that aside?
Actually, I don't watch social media. We made our decisions based on what the law was and what the evidence was. And frankly, we were pretty successful in insulating ourselves from what the swings of public opinion might be out there on the internet.
Bill, I have to tell you, during that sentencing hearing, I have never, as a reporter who's been in dozens and dozens of courtrooms, I've never seen such emotion as I witnessed during that hearing. Both you and the judge were moved to tears. What is it about this case?
Look how spot on I was. That was great. Yeah, very, very rare. And for both of them to do it on the same day and time, it's crazy.
That touches you so personally.
It's so sad in every possible sense. I mean, we've dealt with many homicide cases, unfortunately, during my time here as the prosecutor. But this one just was so sad, such a loss of life. These young people, 4 people killed in their home in the middle of the night. It was just simply cruel and heartless. And feeling for those families and feeling for the 2 surviving roommates. My goodness, I was sitting right next to one of them as she was giving her statement, and she asked that we block her view of the defendant. That's why I was sitting kind of at a funny angle, but that was overwhelmingly powerful. Pure honesty and emotion from this young woman and such strength.
If you watched with me live during this entire part of it, I actually said the same thing. I said, this is intentional. She does not want to see him. I didn't know the prosecutor leaning forward was because she said that to him, so he was just trying to help. But I said that. I'm on a roll right now.
And it was remarkable. And for Dylan Mortensen, after what she had experienced through social media, she just said it all from the heart. It brought that teared me up. I mean, she was just a remarkable person. What was it like for you to listen to her?
Oh, it was almost overwhelming. But I saw her strength, and I knew that we needed to be strong with her and for her.
Bill, you have been in the house where these students were brutally murdered. You saw the blood. You've seen what was done to these students' bodies. How do you describe the crimes that Brian Kohberger committed?
These crimes, these murders were brutal. We've seen plenty of homicides, and each one is different. But this is one that you'll never be able to erase from your eyes and from your memory.
Were you actually inside that house while the victims were still present?
Yes, Ashley Jennings, my senior deputy, and I were both on scene on November 13th. We were in the house. We were working with the investigators and seeing firsthand what was going on, what the crime scene looked like. It's part of our philosophy. We work with our officers right from the very beginning, but it brings with it some challenges, and this certainly brought physically emotional challenges with it.
You've also been in the same room as Brian Kohberger. You've looked into this man's eyes, and you've watched his reactions during these victim impact statements. What did you see?
I saw nothing in Brian Kohberger while the impact statements were going on. It's as though his eyes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He saw nothing because he didn't make any faces. He wasn't sad, mad, nothing. He just creepily stared at everybody reading and pouring their hearts out, and he did not give two craps.
Eyes were empty.
He made eye contact with each of these people, completely unmoved, no reaction, no remorse, no tears. What does that tell you about this man? What is inside him, if anything?
I don't know how to answer that. He's an enigma to me. The evil that he committed is incomprehensible. In many cases, when I'm in court, I'm engaging directly with the defendant. I think I did it once at the sentencing, and that was just to point out that he wasn't going to leave prison until he was dead. And that was it. I don't care to ever interact with him again. I'd be happy to never hear his voice again, never see him.
Bill, I want to ask you a question. I know you've been asked this already a bunch of times, but as you well know, everyone, the families and friends of those students, the public at large, everyone is vexed by the question of why did he do this? Do you have a theory?
I don't know why he did this. Early on in the investigation, when we had folks from the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, their profilers, they were here helping with the investigation in the first few weeks. As they were looking at the case, even just the little we knew then, they were telling us in all likelihood we would never find out or understand why this occurred. And even if the murderer were to tell us the reasons, that in all likelihood it wouldn't make sense to ordinary people like ourselves.
So we know that Kohberger had done some homework. He'd studied past crimes. Is it within the realm of possibility that for Kohberger this was a thrill kill?
I don't think we can rule out anything. I mean, he certainly is a criminal justice major. He was studying criminal behavior. He studied serial killers. We know that. The investigators recovered textbooks on those topics that were part of classes he was taking. He studied how to manage a crime scene, and that was evidence that we were prepared to offer at trial to help explain why this particular crime scene, it was so clean of incriminating evidence, and his car was so clean of incriminating evidence. There was a lot of thought and preparation put into that.
When I talk to people about this case, people know that there are Ring doorbells and security cameras that pick up automobiles in an area, and everyone knows about DNA. How would you describe, he meticulously seemed to prepare for this, and yet he made some mistakes?
Well, no plan is perfect, and we don't know what may have changed his plans if it did inside the home, because we don't know who he intended to attack first. We do believe that Xana encountered him while she was still awake. She was up. She'd received a DoorDash order. That very likely could have put him into a panic, and panicked people make some mistakes. Or maybe it's just simply he's not as smart as he thought he was. Um, we'll never know for sure, and we really don't need to know for sure. I mean, we look at where this investigation went. They started out with one sample of DNA from a knife sheath. It was from a single male, unknown source, and the car leaving the scene. That's what the investigators had. That's what Kohberger left behind. And from there, the team put the case together to where he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no question.
You know, in those weeks after the murder, when the public was getting more and more frustrated that they felt as though no progress was being made. In fact, progress was being made. It's just you can't reveal it, right?
Correct. Yes. Whenever investigations going on, the investigators aren't going to compromise what they know. That's important to protect the quality of the investigation. It was a bit satisfying when we finally were able to come public with the charges and the basis for the charges, and to see the skeptics out there scratch their heads and say, oh, yeah, these folks really did know what they were doing.
And I know you've talked about this quite a bit, but the fact that the defense team came to you seeking a deal, doesn't that mean that you had the leverage in this case, that essentially you were holding all of the cards, that since Brian Kohberger clearly now wanted to live? So help me out on this, because even the President of the United States weighed in on this issue. Why didn't you put a stipulation into this deal where Kohberger would have to have honestly answered all questions about these murders to the satisfaction of detectives before this plea could be finalized? Why didn't you do that?
Well, and Judge Hippler talked about this at the time of sentencing. There is nothing that I believe that Mr. Kohberger could say that would shed the actual truth on what happened. If he were to talk, he would only say things to benefit himself. That would further victimize the families. That's what we've seen repeatedly over the years, in particularly in major cases. Under Idaho law, there's no way we could compel him to disclose. And if we'd gone to trial, he would have never even acknowledged guilt. We would have just moved into appeal time. So it was our conclusion that straight up guilty pleas as charged, waiver of appeal for closure, so we have accountability and closure with fixed life sentences, was the best course.
Bill, based on my experience and with my colleagues on 48 Hours, we cover murder cases for a living. I had a story in which, in a plea deal, the defendant it was contingent on the defendant agreeing to show where he had disposed of a body. And a colleague of mine had a case in another state where the plea deal stipulated that not only did they have to show where the body was, but give a narrative of how that person committed the crime. And it answered all sorts of questions for the families. You guys decided not to do that. And why not at least try? I don't understand that.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, and I certainly understand and hear from the families and members of the public who will always have the question why. As we viewed this and looking at the circumstances of this case, it was our conclusion, and ultimately my conclusion. I'll take responsibility. I'm the elected prosecutor, so it stops with me. But it was our team's decision that getting the guilty pleas, straight up factual guilty pleas, was going to be the best legal way to approach this. I think that there were concerns that somebody like this particular defendant, if he was trying to allocute in a specific factual fashion, he could actually undermine the basis for his plea, and the judge would not have as solid of a foundation to uphold the plea. So we analyze this really from a pretty strict legal factual point of view. It's not to say that we don't understand and appreciate folks' desires to know what really happened, but I have no faith at all that Mr. Kohberger would ever truthfully explain what happened or what he would say would make any sense. And I think that would even further victimize our families.
But why not challenge him on that? Why not see if you might get some honesty from him?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Peter, and we have considered that, and we decided that our best course on this case with this defendant in Idaho was to proceed as we did. I'm not going to say the decision was perfect. It certainly doesn't perfectly answer everybody's questions. I realize that, but I also accept that, as I said earlier from the beginning, we were advised by the profiling professionals that even if the person who committed these homicides tried to explain his reasoning and what occurred, that it wouldn't make sense to ordinary people, and that would further victimize these poor families. It was a judgment call. I accept it. It was a judgment call.
All right, so there we have it. He did address just a little bit that he felt that that was the right call. Wrapping it up, not Kohberger not being able to appeal. That all makes sense. However, I don't think that was really his call to make. I think all of the families should have been able to vote or something, and whichever one had majority, then they should have gone with that one. But this prosecutor was happy with that, and so that's what happened. It will be interesting. We know that Kaylee's family's been pretty outspoken, and I would not be surprised if they somehow try to do a civil lawsuit against any of the prosecutors or something, because they completely feel like they were robbed and didn't get their true justice. So we'll have to keep a lookout. The dad for Kaylee was on the news talking yesterday. I'm going to hop over there in a little bit, and if it's anything interesting that we haven't heard before, I'll make that another live later today. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in a couple hours.